pleasure that you've joined me for today's podcast of Second Chance Coaching. My name is Dr. Richard Lewis. If you'd be so kind as to leave me a rating and your feedback, I'd very much appreciate it, as it will help dynamic people such as yourself optimally find this podcast and add it to their library of favorite podcasts. As you know, at Second Chance Coaching, we focus on seeing everyday life through the eyes of the returning citizen and highlighting the resiliency of the human spirit. I'd love to work with you one-on-one, whether you're a returning citizen, a coaching client seeking their second chance, or you're a representative of a business, college, or university seeking to integrate and support your returning citizens in your respective organizational and learning environments. If you fall into any of these categories, feel free to contact me via email at richard@secondchancecoaching.com or via Instagram at @the_Dr.Richard_Lewis. I am so happy that you've joined me again this week for another episode of Second Chance Coaching. I'd like to give a shout out to our continuing expanding worldwide audience. I'd like to say hello to our new friends in Spain and our new friends in France. Spain and France, welcome to the Second Chance Coaching family. Today's topic is going to be straight talk leadership. And when I was thinking about doing this topic, I went all the way back to high school. When I was in high school, I became a retreat leader during my junior and senior years. I know, the first question you're probably asking is, Richard, what is a retreat leader? Well, let's peel back some of the layers of that onion so we can be at the same level of understanding. I went to a Catholic preparatory high school, and as part of being grown and nurtured in that environment, we had day retreats. So students who were underclassmen would be participants, not leaders. And of course, there would also be those of us who were trained to be retreat leaders. We would go on weekend retreats to train how to lead and run retreat groups. Retreats were, and I believe still are, an important part of the Catholic and Christian faith, as it allows us the opportunity to spend a minimum of a few hours to as long as a month, but we never did a whole month, where we spend some time away from our normal lives for the purpose of reconnecting, usually in prayer, with God. When we went on day retreats, one of the exercises we often did with the students who were retreat participants, as well as those of us who did retreat leader training, was going around the group and telling each person what was your first impression upon meeting them. And of course, they would give you what their first impression was of you. In full transparency, I gotta say, at that time, I absolutely hated that exercise, as it seemed that all the participants would take the opportunity to basically throw verbal haymakers at folks they didn't like or someone they thought was an easy target. Of course, folks who were friends with each other took it really easy on each other. And then, of course, they were those who didn't like, they would sit there and definitely throw those verbal haymakers. But then again, what would you expect from teenagers? That's what we would do. But looking back on that exercise, I still hated it. But many years later, I do appreciate the value of the exercise, as it helped you to frame giving quote unquote straight talk feedback to others, with hopefully adding the element of constructive feedback that you're giving as well as receiving. When we would perform this straight talk exercise, or when one would perform this straight talk exercise, you're on that journey of leadership as one who is learning how to give constructive feedback, as well as how to properly receive and process feedback. As I tell right now all the students that I teach in my classes, the first person you learn how to lead in this life is yourself. And if you embrace the authentic and honest process of self-leadership, then you are open to the journey of leadership, the journey to leadership on the right foot. And that's whether you're leading a team, leading a project, or leading yourself on your own journey. And that journey could also be an academic journey, as well as your reentry journey. As a leader, I believe in two concepts. Number one, being a servant leader in which you're one that's not only leading, but the leadership is doing alongside your colleagues and being of service to your colleagues. Number two, to give my colleagues a straight talk, no BS approach to leadership. In addition to having that straight talk, no BS approach, I'll always try to do my best to be respectful and compassionate in my approach. Now, does that mean everyone embraces this approach? Of course not. In a perfect utopian existence, you lay out your vision, and of course your colleagues will be all in, but that's not always the case. Whether you're leading faculty or professors or any members of a team, in life, even with the best vision and thoroughly laid out plans, human nature is the factor that gives you that human nature is the factor that gives you optimal team players, energetic supporters, as well as indifferent colleagues who are just coming in and getting a check. But they'll also give you perpetual resistors and, of course, nasty saboteurs. Even in the fields of higher education, human resources, and criminal justice reform, you will have the most positive fulfillment and some of the most negative engagements around. And I've definitely experienced them both. And so will you. As long as you're working with colleagues at a job, at school, or even owning your own business, one always has to be ready to engage with those elements, good and bad. The key is always being true to your approach, but also being flexible and doing your best on a day by day basis. If I could also add, another factor that's also important is really who you work for. When you're at a job and you're sitting in an interview and you're getting to know your prospective employer or colleagues, it's important that you also ask questions because you want to know who you're going to be working for and who you're going to be working with. Your contingent is your success is also contingent on the support that you receive from your organizational superiors. In my going on, let me think, 28 years of a professional career, I have had the best of best when it comes to bosses, outstanding bosses, pillars of the earth. And I've also had the worst of the worst of bosses, people that I wouldn't even want to break bread with. Now, you will experience those as well, but let's get back to your experience as a leader and, of course, sharing some of my experiences with you. First, let me let you know that being a leader, supervising people is very difficult. Let nobody tell you otherwise. It's not easy because you're leading and managing the expectations of those who you're going to be leading and those who you trust to lead. So you have to answer to the people that you're leading and those that you directly report to. As a leader, you're taking your team from point A to point B, sometimes all the way to point Z or whatever your endpoint is. Leadership. Your leadership is that ongoing journey between the starting point and the end point. During these points as leaders, we are also tasked to lead change, which is not always easy. When I took on a new position, I had a team of academic advisors that had gone through multiple leaders. I was wondering how was I going to do going into that position. My boss at the time was a really nice guy. Sometimes too much of a nice guy, even in these environments, which is definitely possible. And then the staff had the reputation of being a toxic staff, and they most certainly did not want to, and they most certainly did not disappoint when it came to that reputation. They certainly lived up to that reputation and then some. There's plenty of other podcast episodes in which we could discuss toxic environments and how we handle it, but ultimately I prevailed and survived those individuals. Upon arriving into that work environment, within the first 2 weeks, I received a letter of resignation from one of the academic advisors. And I heard that the employee was a marginal performer. So I didn't really look at it as a big loss. And I was looking forward to making my own hire and starting the slow process of constructing my own team. About 10 days after I received that letter, the employee then asked to meet with my boss and myself to talk about withdrawing their letter of resignation. My boss, of course, like I said, was a nice guy, and he was in favor of letting the employee change their mind and come back. But he did respect that we should have a conference outside of the presence of the employee to really talk about it some more. I was adamant with him, and I said that once the employee quits, they quit, especially if they're a marginal or bad employee. You don't want to take those type of people back. I don't want to see anybody out of a job, but we didn't terminate the employee. The employee decided to quit on their own. But my boss was being very kind. And when you're in these positions, from your organizational superior is voicing his or her opinions to you, you kind of feel like you're swimming upstream and fighting a losing fight. I really appreciated that we had a respectful, straight talk exchange. But after it was all said and done, and I got an understanding of where he was coming from, I still, against my better judgment, accepted the employee's rescinding of their resignation. And I figured, okay, after this, we'll just go with the flow and do our best. But after that, my working relationship with that employee was not good because all they would do was complain about seeing students, complain about doing their job. And I kept up with the straight talk approach and the compassionate approach of leadership with this employee, but it just wasn't working. And at the time when it came to conduct performance evaluations, I had to do 2 annual performance evaluations with this employee based on how long I was there. I basically did the sandwich method. I would lift them up and really give encouraging talks and finding good things to talk about what it is that they did. And then I would follow that up with constructively discussing their lack of customer service and other areas that needed improvement in their service to students and to other members of the team. And then I closed out with expressing support for them and encouraging them as a member of the team, because ultimately they're still a member of the team and you want them to do their best, because when they do well, we all do well. The employee, unfortunately, really did not receive any of that, none of that. And the employee continues to be toxic and difficult to this very day. But the good thing is, I'm not their supervisor anymore. But for me, it won't change my approach to straight talk, compassionate, and servant leadership. Right now, I have a team of specialized advisors that are just a great team to work with. They're simply a dynamic Delta force. And right now, I also have a supervisor who is supportive and trusts me and allows me to lead. Now, my previous boss, who was a nice guy, he was the same way too, but he was just a really nice guy. And, unfortunately, bad people take advantage of that. But in our new team that I'm with now, we have students, we have issues, we have situations that make some days harder than others. But as a unit, we continue to lean on each other. We speak straight talk and respectful to one another, and we concentrate on the processes, goals, and objectives to be of service to our students and to each other. Now, when there's straight talk, respect, compassion, and trust with those who you lead with and those who trust you to lead, the stage is definitely set for your success. Now, will it always be easy? No. Will it always be successful? No. And I know that sounds pessimistic, but however, with an environment of leadership that we've outlined, you and yours are set up for more successes than challenges. If you could speak straight, if you could be respectful, you could be compassionate, and you're serving each other, you're going to definitely have more successes than challenges, and you're going to be able to overcome those challenges. Now, when I look back at my leadership experiences, there have definitely been more successes than challenges. And going forward, I embrace the successes and I welcome the challenges because it's already been determined that those challenges can't stand a chance against me. And they can't stand a chance against you either. Because when you come into this approach and you come in with this positive attitude and you do your best day by day, the victory is already yours. The victory is already yours when you speak that straight talk, compassionate, respectful, and servant leadership approach. I'd love to see how it goes for you. Let me know how it goes for you. I'll continue to keep you updated on what goes on over here. But right now, I have an outstanding team that I love working with. And we'll continue to talk about these approaches as far as not only leadership for yourself, leadership for a team, and leadership along your journey. But as you go along your journey, once again, if you'd like to work with me one-on-one, whether you're a returning citizen, coaching client, or you're that representative of a business, college, or university, please feel free to contact me via email at richard@secondchancecoaching.com or via Instagram at @DrRichardLewis. Remember, you've been blessed to see another day. That means you've been blessed with your second chance, so it's up to you to make the best of it. I love you all. Take care, and see you next week.